Today, I'll be ranking every single Treyarch Zombies boss fight from easiest to hardest. To clarify the rules here, I will be counting all end of Easter egg fights as a boss fight, even if there isn't a technical boss. So maps like Tagged or Toten and D Machine will be included. And maps with two-part boss fights like Ancient Evil or Garrod Crovie, the two different fights will just be lumped together and ranked as one. The easiest Treyarch Zombies boss fight of all time has to be Zetsubo no Shima. If you don't know, you don't actually have to kill anything when you're in the Zetsubo no Shima boss fight. You can just run around in circles and wait for the boss to open up its crit spot. You don't have to kill any thrashers, you don't have to kill any zombies, any spiders, literally nothing. Just run around in circles and shoot the crit spot. It's funny because it's probably actually easier to beat the Zetsubo no Shima boss fight than it is to just complete a regular round of Call of Duty Zombies. I genuinely feel like there's been more deaths in the Zetsubo no Shima boss fight arena because people went down the elevator without their gas mask than there have been deaths in the actual fight. It's a cool fight aesthetically, like the entire room you're in, it has like a very like eerie, creepy aesthetic, but as far as difficulty, Zetsubo no Shima has absolutely none. Next up is Firebase Z. I feel like Firebase Z was really trying to give Zetsubo no Shima a run for its money on what was the easiest boss fight of all time. Once you teleport back to the spawn area, you pretty much have to kill the Orda boss. The only problem is you can do this in probably like 3, maybe 4 clips of the Reiki, and that's pretty much game over. Also, you have just about every tool that you could imagine here. If you need any perk in the game, you can have it. If you need any equipment, it's there. If you forgot to pack up on your gun, go ahead and do it because it's literally right there. If you need ammo, of course that's there. And then of course there's armor. Like you could literally just hop into this boss fight, get all the stuff you need right then and there, and then you're good to go. Anyways, the actual fight, again, it's just really easy. All you gotta do is kind of keep in mind of the zombies in front of you, and if you pop a ring of fire, you're good to go. Next up on the list is D Machine. Now, yes, there isn't a technical boss fight here. There's no boss that needs to be killed. The end of the D Machine Easter egg is a defend Orlov mission. Basically, he goes around to 3 different generators and repairs them. I don't know what he's actually doing, but that's what I'm gonna say. And you would think that if Orlov took a certain amount of damage, you would just fail it, but that's not the case. Basically, you can just take your good old time. You can let Orlov get absolutely shit on. It literally doesn't matter because you could literally come back to him 5 minutes later, get the zombies off of him, and he's just going to go back to repairing the generator. If you have any one of the die variants, it just makes it even easier. And even if things get to be overwhelming and you do take a hit or two, you could always just repair your armor that's conveniently placed right there for you. Next up is the Revelations quote unquote boss fight. We're talking about the second one here because for all of these, I'm only talking about the end of Easter egg fights. The second of the 2 boss fights on Revelations is very simple. Basically, you just fill a little soul box to get the summoning key. You throw it into Sophia like you're playing basketball, and then you can shoot the Shadow Man until he's in line where you can press F on the Chronium. Very plain and simple. It's just like the Shadows of Evil one. Again, I'm not ranking the Shadows of Evil here just because you can beat it in like literally, I'm not even kidding, like 5 seconds. But if I was, it'd probably be like right here as well because it's literally the same thing. Just shoot the Shadow Man, press interact on the Chronium, and you're good to go to watch the cutscene. Next up, we have the map 9. Now 9, in my ranking every Easter egg by difficulty video, I had 9 towards the top of my list on the hardest Easter eggs. That is due to absolutely no part to the boss fight. It's basically 2 giant elephants that come out at you, but the thing is, you have so much space to work with that it's pretty hard to mess this up. The 9 boss fight arena has to be the largest area that we've ever had in Zombies. Basically, just run around, keep the gladiators, keep the brawlers at bay, and you're good to go. Literally, like every single one that you kill pretty much spawns at a max ammo. So if you're out of ammo, that's pretty much not even an issue. The only thing you need to watch out for is the elephants do have this attack that does like 150 damage. But even if you take the damage from that, you're probably still fine because there's not really much else to actually do damage to you while you're in this fight. If you go into this with a Helion Salvo, it's literally even easier. I've done the 9 Easter egg probably like 10 times, and I don't think I've ever seen anybody take it down during it. Next up is Blood of the Dead. Maybe I could have had Blood of the Dead a little bit to the easier side, but I feel like all of the boss fights up until this point are like on a scale of 1 to 10, they're all at 1. Like all of these are like pretty hard to actually mess up. Like you almost have to go out of your way to take it down during these boss fights. But anyways, the Blood of the Dead boss fight is a 3-wave. Basically, you kill all the Brutuses, then you kill all the zombies, and then you shield blast the little machine in the middle. Rinse and repeat for a total of 3 times, and then kill Richtofen. It's so straightforward. Again, it's one of those that are just very hard to mess up. After you just did the entire Blood of the Dead Easter egg, you're probably pretty set up by this point. But if you manage to get through all of the rest of that Easter egg, I highly doubt that you're going to struggle even in the slightest in this boss fight. At the 10th hardest boss fight of all time is actually the Forsaken boss fight. The Forsaken boss fight is simple in practice, but it can actually get a little bit chaotic in the boss fight arena. Maxis is basically going to fly around, and you have to use her as a soul box 4 times. Each time you fill up one of the soul boxes, she's going to fly over to one of the turrets and charge it up. Then you can actually do damage to the Forsaken boss himself. You just gotta do this 4 times to 4 different crit spots and you're good to go. It can be a little chaotic with all the different bosses just spawning in there. You know, there's Manglers in there, there's Mimics, there's Krasny Soldats. It can be a little bit overwhelming at times, but if you just take your time and eventually get around to filling up the soul box, you'll be good to go. And number 9 is Alpha Omega. Now we're starting to get into the boss fights that you do need to make sure that you're actually fully set up before you go into. Coincidentally, it's another fight where you have to fill up 4 soul boxes. This time though, you're in much tighter corridors in the lower area of Alpha Omega. Basically, you fill up the 4 soul boxes while the Avogadro is just shooting at you, and each time he hits you with one of those shots, it does 150 damage, so you need to try to not take damage from him. You kind of always have to be thinking about, how can I take cover from the Avogadro, or how can I use my shield to block some of these shots? So considering how small some of these areas are that you have to fill these soul boxes in, it can be a lot to handle. So before you go into the boss fight, you're going to want to make sure you have a Ray Gun Mark II, and that you have all 4 of your perks, and that you have your specialist charge, because you're going to need all of that to make sure you survive this. Once you're done with the 4 soul boxes though, you head back to the APD, and basically you have to like shoot the Avogadro into the APD. This can be a little tedious as he's bouncing off the different walls while you're trying to get him in there, but the easy mode big brain strategy for this is to actually have a katana on, because if you have a katana on, you can just swing on him and get him in the APD fairly easily. Next up is Dead of the Night. Dead of the Night definitely has some interesting boss fight mechanics. You basically have to fight a giant werewolf. Why a giant werewolf? I don't know, you tell me. But in this area, there's 3 different statues that emit a green light, and basically you have to line up the green light from 3 different statues to where it's all pointing at the same square. Then you have to lure the werewolf into that green square so that you can actually do damage to him. Again, like I said, this is another one of those fights where you're gonna want to be set up before you actually go into. If you have a Spitfire fully upgraded and with silver bullets on it, you can actually pretty much take him out in like 2 clips. Or if you have something like a Helion Salvo as well, that can be really good. The main problem that I come into while doing this boss fight is all the different like elementals and different zombie types that spawn in. Like you got the Nosferatus, you got the regular vampires, you got the, you know, fire zombies that blow up and do like more than half your health of damage. So you need to like keep your distance from the actual horde that you're training while you're trying to line up the statues. Fortunately though, you only have to actually take the giant werewolf out 2 times and then he's dead. And then between those 2 times, there's kind of like a middle phase where you just take out regular werewolves. I feel like explaining the Dead of the Night boss fight makes it seem a lot more complicated and difficult than it actually is. But if you're fully set up going into this, you're probably not going to struggle too much. Next up is Mauer der Toten. Again, fitting in the theme with all of these boss fights from here on out, if you're not set up, you're going to be screwed going into this. If you want to take out Valentina, you're going to need one of 2 things. Either you're going to need a Cerberus, hopefully with at least like 2 pack-a-punches on it, or you're going to need something like a death machine or a flamethrower, something along those lines. If you don't have one of these things, you're pretty much going to be shooting pebbles at her. Now, the Valentina boss fight is actually a 5-stage boss fight. While doing it, you need to constantly be looking out for when she pulls up her like little minions that regen her health and pretty much undo all the work that you've been putting in by shooting her. And then she has a basic wipe attack that you obviously need to take cover of. And probably worst of all is when she shoots her little turret thing and just insta deletes your armor pretty much no matter what. And unlike a lot of the other Cold War boss fights, you can't just go and regen your armor while you're in the middle of the fight. You can do it between waves, but you can't actually do it during the actual wave. And number 6 is Derising Drock. Derising Drock was the first ever real Treyarch Zombies boss fight. Again, maybe you count Shadows of Evil. Personally, I don't, but for me, it's the first ever actual boss fight. It's 3 waves, basically run up into the middle, place your Ragnaroks down, and then shoot the giant keeper. Problem is, there's a bunch of different panzers that spawn in and make life miserable. Of course, these are the Derising Drock panzers that throw out their little shock charges every 2 seconds. On top of this, there's a bunch of things that get in the way of making this boss fight simpler. There's always the communication issue with like who's going to place the next Ragnarok, and if nobody places theirs in time, then you have to all like take cover behind a pillar, which still makes my heart drop to this day. I don't know, maybe I have it this high out of sheer PTSD from all the failed attempts of this years ago, but the Derising Drock boss fight is definitely the hardest part about playing the Derising Drock Easter egg. Next up is Garrod Crovie. Now this is the first 2-part boss fight that's on the list. First fight is against a giant dragon, and the second fight versus Nikolai. What makes the dragon part of this a lot more difficult is the entire boss fight arena is covered in fire, meaning you're going to spend a lot of your time with your shield out in front of you. And also, if you don't have a ray gun Mark III ready to go to shoot the dragon's crit spot, you're probably going to struggle a little bit. Once you finally do manage to take out the dragon though, of course comes Nikolai. 2 main things you need to look out for the Nikolai boss fight. 1 are the wraps that are constantly on you, and 2, you can actually get stepped on and take a completely unwarranted down. I think I said in the Easter egg video that Garrod Crovie was the hardest Easter egg up until this point in the series, and it is with no doubt also the hardest boss fight up until this point in the series. Next up is Tagder Toten. Now I know what you're thinking, it's not even an actual boss. How is it this high on the list? Because it's actually pretty hard to stay in that little circle for the entire time without going down. You have to cross lava paths to prevent you from regenerating your health. You have to fill soul boxes up in very tight spaces, and overall the ending of Tagder Toten is not easy. For me, it's 100% the only thing that's even slightly difficult during the entire Easter egg though, but that doesn't change the fact that I've taken more downs than I care to admit on this part. The big brain strategy here is to not actually kill the zombies when you're walking from one soul box to the next. The strategy is to kind of slowly snake your way through the map, kind of running a train but at walking speed. But this definitely gets more difficult when you're walking through lava and you're trying to manage your shield all at the same time. And then of course it ends with the circle shrinking, so you literally have to stand on like a 1x1. Of course you have a specialist to kind of make this a little bit easier, but overall I just think it's one of the harder quote-unquote boss fights that we've ever had. And number 3 has got to be Ancient Evil. This is the second of 2-part boss fights that are on the list. The first, you gotta fight Pegasus. You gotta shoot him down, and then while he's down you basically do a bunch of melee damage with your specialist. The whole time the zombie warlord, or whatever his name is like throwing little fire things at you, which help you charge your specialist, but they also do damage to you. So there's like a million things that you need to micromanage while you're trying to do this. There's 3 different islands to the boss fight that you can jump between, but as you progress further and further into the boss fight, they slowly start to get eliminated until you're down to just 1. Once you finally take out Pegasus, then comes the actual fight versus the zombie warlord, which is pretty similar as far as the mechanics go. You basically get him down and then do a bunch of melee damage with your specialist. I feel like there's more things to micromanage during this boss fight than there is like any other boss fight. You gotta manage your ammo in both your regular gun and your gauntlet. You gotta manage your specialist charge. You gotta make sure you're constantly stepping on the fire to make sure your specialist is charged enough. And then of course there's 2 different HP pools that you need to worry about, Pegasus and the zombie warlord. It's just a lot to deal with, and it's why it comes in so high on the list. And number 2 is Voyage of Despair. I debated for a while of whether I wanted to put Voyage or Ancient Evil higher. I ended up putting Voyage slightly higher on the list. This is a 5-part boss fight that I think all in all takes like 20 minutes, even if you're like relatively quick with it. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it's definitely like very, very long. The first 2 waves basically introduce you to this giant eye. All you gotta do is survive for the first 2 of the 5 waves. Unfortunately though, things get difficult. There's a ton of different elemental zombies. You know, you got Blight Fathers, you got Stokers. They really just throw everything at you during this. Fortunately though, they do give you a max ammo and a carpenter, but if your shield breaks at any one of the stages on this boss fight, you're just absolutely screwed and there's no way to get another one back. Then for the 3rd and 4th waves, the eye starts shooting at you, and while the eye is shooting at you, you can do damage to it. And once you do enough damage to it 3 times, then you progress through each of those waves. And then comes the 5th, the final wave, where finally you can actually take out the eye for good. I think you got to do the same thing you did on the 3rd and 4th waves by doing damage to him 3 times. This time he'll do a wipe attack, and you have to, while he's doing the wipe attack, you have to do enough damage to him so he won't just one-shot kill you. And then you do that 3 times. So I know none of that made sense. If you've never done it, I definitely didn't explain it good enough for you to be able to do it, but that's kind of the point. Is it's a lot. There's a ton of time you have to spend at this boss fight. You have to do so much damage to this eye over the course of all 5 of the waves. Things like the Helion Salvo, the Kraken, and Homunculus are going to be your 3 best friends if you want to try to do this, because I honestly couldn't imagine trying to do this boss fight without any of those 3. The hardest boss fight in Treyarch Zombies history for me is the Legion boss fight at the end of the Outbreak Easter egg. This is rough. I've probably died more times during the Legion boss fight than I have in all of the other boss fights. Fighting the Legion boss fight is a jumbled mess. There's gonna be Manglers, there's gonna be Krasnies, there's gonna be Hellhounds, there's gonna be armored zombies, there's gonna be Megatons. They'll spot in just about whatever on top of you, so you need to constantly be moving. First, you have to shoot them in the chest to initiate the first wave of the boss. Then you have to take out the 3 orbs. Meanwhile, all those zombie types are still spawning in on you. And then there's 2 more stages of this boss after. Even in a game like Cold War that gives you a ton of stuff to help you out, for me, the Legion boss fight easily is the hardest Treyarch Zombies boss fight of all time. Obviously, if I was including non-Treyarch zombies, number 1 would probably be the Metastopheles, so maybe I can make that video in the future where we talk about every single boss fight from all the different games. But let me know what you guys think. What's the hardest Treyarch Zombies boss fight in history?